What if 3 men cornered a woman in a dark corridor, cut her uniform open with a knife, and thought they'd won, only to discover she was a Navy SEAL who needed exactly 1 second to end them? They didn't strike her. Didn't throw her down. They didn't have to. They cut open her uniform shirt, slowly, deliberately, with a training knife. Not to wound. To humiliate. 3 men. 1 corridor. No witnesses. 3 men standing too close. 1 woman being treated like entertainment. And silence they mistook for submission. They called it correction. They called it form adjustment. But what it really was: sexual harassment in uniform. What they didn't know was the woman they were cornering was a Navy SEAL. And by the time that knife hit the ground, all 3 were flat on their backs, disarmed, disoriented, done. But here's the real question that shut an entire military base down. What silent move did she use that left grown men gasping and commanders speechless? Keep watching, because in the next 30 seconds you're about to see it step by step. Only on TaleVerse Studio. Before we reveal the exact technique that ended 3 careers in one breath, drop a comment right now. Where in the world are you watching from? Smash that like button, subscribe to TaleVerse Studio, and hit the bell, because today's story proves she didn't need backup. She just needed one excuse. The humidity clung low over the dirt pack like it had something to prove. Boots struck in perfect rhythm against the morning heat. 100 voices chanting in cadence, muscles pulling against worn fatigues as the sun broke over the eastern fence line of the Joint Warfare Conditioning Facility. This wasn't the parade ground at Annapolis. This wasn't even one of those SEAL prep bases in Florida. This was one of the few forward-integrated Marine Navy cross-branch stations designed for friction. And friction was exactly what you could feel rising through the air. Combat readiness wasn't theoretical here. It was bruises and repetition. Rubber knives. Recycled blood on mats. Names shouted with clipped authority. No speeches. No ranks exchanged when your face hit the floor. Just pressure and pushback. And whoever was still standing at the end, she didn't speak as she stood at the edge of the yard, tucked in with the rest of the day's mixed unit. Quiet. Motionless. Her regulation shirt folded precisely at the wrists, dog tags tucked, hair buzzed tight to the nape. Her uniform looked clean but not fresh, washed too many times, scarred just slightly at the elbow seam. There were no stripes on her collar. No distinguishing patches. No name. Just a numbered armband clipped above the elbow. That was by design. This was anonymous integration, a test environment where even officers weren't identified, unless they failed to perform. Someone muttered behind her, just loud enough to hear over the bark of the instructor. Logistics or admin. Don't think she's here for grapples. Another voice snorted. Doesn't look like she can hold a charge, let alone a weapon. Probably paperwork overflow. She didn't turn. Didn't acknowledge. The 3 men behind her, younger, bulkier, with energy that spiked whenever they felt unseen, kept talking. One leaned slightly forward. Bet she's not even active anymore. Look at that stance. Arms crossed like she's holding on to herself. They were wrong, of course. But she didn't correct them because she didn't need to be believed. She just needed to be here. The drills started. High knees. Drop rolls. Shuttle crawls. Sandbag drags. 10 at a time were called forward to pair off into rotating melee sequences. Grapples with progressive resistance, knife defense drills, mock takedowns. She was assigned to the second group. That same trio rotated with her. The tallest of the 3, dark buzzcut, a corporal, grinned when he saw the pairing. Guess I'm stuck babysitting. She blinked once. Expression unreadable. Posture loose. Non-threatening. The instructor barked. Start. He lunged. She sidestepped. He stumbled. Reset. A second attempt. She let herself go down on purpose, gently, without flair, as if unsure of her footing. The other 2 men chuckled. One called out, "Don't break her in half, Eli." The sequence ended. She said nothing. But when the corporal offered his hand to pull her up, she stood without touching him. A subtle thing. But he noticed. So did the other 2. By the time they hit the 8th drill of the morning, the story had spread across their row. She was passive, unresponsive, fragile. Nobody in their circle had seen her retaliate. Not once. That kind of silence made men like them believe in superiority. They weren't curious why she was quiet. They were starting to get bold about it. And boldness unchecked was about to turn dangerous. Imagine thinking you're the predator and realizing too late you just cornered a lioness. Keep watching TaleVerse Studio. This is the moment everything flipped. The sun climbed higher, baking the heat into the gravel until it radiated upward through the soles of every boot. Sweat darkened collars. Fabric clung. The air tasted faintly metallic, mineral dust and exertion. And with it came the loosening of discipline that always follows when authority drifts just far enough away to stop watching. That was when the tone shifted. The corporal, Eli, no longer bothered masking the way his eyes tracked her. Not respectful. Not even curious. Just assessing. The way a man looks at something he believes exists for his entertainment, rather than his equal. His two companions mirrored him. One broader in the shoulders with a jaw that tightened whenever he laughed. The other leaner, sharper-eyed, clearly the type who mistook swagger for command. They fell in close during rotational drills. So close their elbows brushed her ribs when they reset formations. At first it was incidental, plausibly deniable. Then it wasn't. Eli bumped her. Not hard enough to draw notice, just enough to assert space where none was granted. When she didn't flinch, he smirked, emboldened. The bigger one nudged his knee into the back of her thigh during a crouch sequence, feigning imbalance. "Careful," he muttered, mouth tilted in false concern. "You might hurt yourself out here." She didn't rise to it, breathing even. Eyes forward. A line of calm that did not waver. That silence frustrated them more than defiance ever could. During a rest reset near the hydration table, the leaner one flicked his gaze over her uniform with deliberate slowness. "You always wear your shirt that tight?" he asked casually, loud enough for nearby trainees to hear, quiet enough to skate under formal misconduct. A couple of heads turned. Nobody intervened. "Maybe she's trying to show us something," Eli added, barely suppressing a grin. "You know, motivation." The others laughed. Low. Unchallenged. She took another sip of water and stepped back into formation. The instructors called for transitional drills, movement work that led through a narrow corridor bordering the equipment bay. A blind wedge of shadow just beyond the flickering utility lights where spare mats and racks of wooden practice weapons lined the wall. It was used constantly, rarely monitored. That was where they herded themselves around her. Not physically yet, just tightening the circle as they moved through. Blocking angles. Speaking too close. Structuring a dominance they believed nobody would question. "You knew?" the broad-shouldered one asked as they passed beneath the overhang, his voice carrying lazy assumption. She gave a single nod. "Thought so," he replied. "You gotta know, out here we help each other adjust. Gear, form, posture. Might look rough to outsiders, but that's how it works." His eyes flicked downward toward the line of her shirt seam. "Sometimes," Eli added, "you don't know what's off until someone points it out." His words didn't hold humor. They held suggestion. The kind that creeps in when men believe hierarchy favors them, and silence means permission. She shifted her stance just slightly, not retreating, not advancing, only recalibrating the angles between their bodies. A quiet correction that went unnoticed by anyone who didn't understand positional awareness. The leaner one scoffed softly. "Relax. She won't say anything. You see that face? Stone. Probably trained not to make noise." That one word, noise, hung in the air longer than it should have. The instructors barked for another set, voices echoing off concrete further down. But the three slowed their pace just enough to let the rest move ahead. Just enough to isolate her. And she knew it. She didn't move away. Didn't accelerate. She just kept walking forward, knowing exactly how men like this operated, and where they were about to lead the moment. Their swagger grew stronger with every unchallenged second. And her calm? Unbroken. Because what they thought was submission was restraint waiting for ignition. Right now, thousands of people are realizing this exact moment is happening somewhere in the world today. If you're still watching, you need to see what she did next, only on TaleVerse Studio. The corridor narrowed. Fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting pale reflections across stacked mats, folded harnesses, and shelves of rubber training blades arranged with clinical precision. The instructors' voices faded behind the cement divider, close enough to hear if someone raised their voice, far enough that no one would notice a quiet moment gone wrong. The three slowed again. So did she. They didn't stop her. They guided her subtly with the language of instruction disguising intention. Hold there, Eli said, gesturing toward a bare patch beside the gear rack. Your posture's off. Can't engage properly like that. A reasonable sentence. Normal tone. The kind used 1,000 times every morning in places like this. She turned just enough to appear cooperative, just enough to keep their confidence intact. The bigger one stepped in, arms loose, grin drawn thin. Shoulders too tight, he added. You tense up when you move. We'll show you the right angle. The leaner one reached toward the shelf and plucked a training knife. Rubberized, dull, built for drills, but still rigid enough to leave a message. He twirled it casually like a toy. Relax, he said lightly. Just demonstrating. You'll feel where the weakness is. He moved closer. Close enough now that heat pulsed between them in a space never meant to be shared under pretense. The blade passed along the fabric of her uniform, tracing the line of her chest. Not threatening. Not lethal. But deliberate. Slow. Suggestive. A violation masked as correction. The others watched, smirks tightening as the pressure escalated. See, Eli murmured. Too rigid. Fabric bunches right here. You've got to loosen up. Then the knife bit not into skin into the shirt. A sharp slice. Clean and intentional. Splitting fabric open from collarbone downward. Not deep. Not dangerous. But unmistakably degrading. The fabric sagged. A thin horizontal rip spread across the seam. And the air shifted. A flicker of stunned silence passed through the corridor. Then came the laughter, soft at first, encouraging, emboldened. You should feel lucky, the leaner one added, lips curling. Most wouldn't get this level of attention. Yeah, Eli joined in. Considerate hands-on mentorship. Her eyes lifted. And for the first time that morning their confidence faltered. Because something in her gaze had changed. Not anger. Not fear. Focus. A razor. Silent recalculation. Her hand slowly rose to the torn line of fabric, pinched it together, adjusted it as if correcting uniform code. Then she spoke one word. Step back. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight that pressed against the walls of the corridor. The bigger one scoffed. You don't like our method? The leaner shrugged, blade still idly twirling. Relax. This is how you learn. She didn't repeat herself. Her voice didn't harden. It simply clipped through their space like an order etched into air. Step back. Eli smirked again. A reflex he'd convinced himself was invincible. Or what? That question hung in the narrow corridor like vapor. For a portion of a second, there was absolute stillness. No shouting. No intervention. Just three men standing too close, and one woman perfectly still. And then something shifted beneath her stance. A subtle pivot of foot placement. A change in shoulder posture. A quiet inhale that wasn't fear but preparation. The training knife paused mid-spin as the leaner one tilted his head, sensing a change but unable to interpret it. What? He started to say. He didn't finish. Because in the space between his breath and the word, her hand moved. Not rushed. Not violent. Not emotional. Calculated. And the corridor braced for the instant when dominance collapsed into discipline. The moment he said, or what? Was the moment her world slowed into calculation. Her left foot shifted 6 inches back. Weight transfer complete, shoulders aligned. She drew a single controlled breath through her nose, eyes locked not on the man's face, but the triangle formed between his wrist, elbow, and knife. His posture told her everything. Elbow slightly bent, shoulders still cocky, stance too square. The blade flicked once more in his hand. She moved. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was surgical. Her right hand snapped up and snared his wrist mid-spin, not with brute force, with anatomical precision. A twist that forced the joint into hyperextension before his nervous system could process threat. The knife clattered uselessly to the floor. Her left hand rose in tandem, palm to chin upward drive, not to break, but to lift his center of gravity off his base. He staggered backward, off balance, not yet down. And that was when she finished it. She pivoted behind him and hooked his arm across her hip, a classic control throw taught in every close combat school, perfected in blacked-out basements overseas. He hit the concrete with a dull thud. Air gone. Nerve confused. Control severed. The leaner one hadn't even finished blinking before she turned. The big one lunged too late. He reached for her shirt as if trying to regain control over the symbol he tried to degrade. But she caught his forearm mid-swing and turned with it, using his own mass against him. Her heel hooked his calf. His forward motion toppled him. She slammed his chest into the stacked mats, arm wrenched behind him in a position designed not to injure, unless he resisted. He resisted. So she finished the lock. Something in his shoulder popped. Not a break, just a reset of entitlement. Eli froze, still standing, still smirking but not moving. His bravado hadn't caught up with what he'd just seen. "You done?" she asked quietly. That was the only time she raised her voice above a whisper. Eli glanced at his friends. One gasping on the ground, one twisted on the mats, the third motionless, blinking like he'd just come out of a bad dream. He moved but not toward her, toward the knife. Bad choice. Her foot intercepted his hand mid-reach. She didn't kick. She stepped downward, controlled enough weight to pin, not crush. He flinched. All right. Stand down." She wasn't even breathing hard. He looked up at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Not as an inconvenience, not as a plaything, but as something far beyond his understanding. The leaner one moaned behind them. The knife rolled harmlessly across the floor. She picked it up, held it flat in her hand, looked at the edge that had sliced through her shirt, not sharp but pointed enough to be used for humiliation. Then she placed it on the nearest shelf, and turned to face all three. "This is your one warning," she said, calm as a scope-dialed breath. "You won't get another." Footsteps echoed suddenly from the outer corridor. Voices, drill instructors, MPs. The echo was tight, fast, purposeful. Someone had noticed the delay. Someone had called it in. She stepped back from the pile of broken confidence and resumed a neutral stance. When the instructors rounded the corner and saw the three men on the floor, one wheezing, one dazed, one frozen, and her standing with her torn shirt held shut by a single pinched fist, the entire hallway stopped. One of the instructors barked, "What the hell is going on here?" She didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she looked straight at the officer in front, extended her ID wallet without a word, and waited for the room to catch up to the truth. The instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Darrow, 20 years deep in this command, took it with the casual impatience of someone dragged into another mess caused by unchecked testosterone. Then he opened it and stopped breathing. His gaze froze on the top clearance band, then flicked down line by line, a page that should have held a name, a photo, a service number, but instead revealed acronyms and references only people above his grade had ever been authorized to see. The room changed. Darrow looked up sharply. "What's your name, ma'am?" She took a step forward. Her voice was quiet. Final. "Commander Briarcade. Naval Special Warfare Tier 1 evaluation." It didn't thunder. Didn't need to. The MP straightened reflexively. The instructor took a half step back. Eli's face drained of color. Tier 1. Darrow cut off the younger MP's confusion. "Secure this corridor. Get medical to transport these three to isolation holding. No communication. No statements. No leaks. Do it." "That's a direct order." Commander Cade rebuttoned the edges of her torn shirt. It didn't hide the damage, but it closed the moment. "Commander," Darrow said, adjusting his posture, "do you require medical attention?" "No." "Do you wish to file charges?" "I don't file," she said. "I recommend." She nodded toward the three men being lifted, groaning, to their feet. "And I recommend you call your commanding officer." She walked past them, not rushed, not triumphant. Just calm. Just finished. And behind her, the hallway finally remembered how to breathe. If you're feeling chills right now, you're not alone. This is TaleVerse Studio, where respect is earned the hard way. The base commander arrived less than 6 minutes later. Rear Admiral Colton Graves was not the type to respond personally to minor incidents. But the moment Gunnery Sergeant Darrow relayed what had happened, and more importantly, who had handed him that black sealed ID wallet, Graves got in his own vehicle and came down from the officer's wing at a speed that ignored every posted limit. He didn't speak when he entered the corridor. Didn't ask for a summary. His eyes swept the scene in one long, quiet pass. Commander Cade stood beside the torn corner of the matting, arms folded across her re-pinned shirt. Silent. Upright. Her posture had not changed. "Commander Cade," Graves said, voice even, "would you join me?" She didn't salute. She didn't have to. Clearance at her level didn't operate under traditional protocol once authority was established. Instead, she walked beside him down the corridor into the sealed meeting room. No one else entered. The door closed behind them. It took Graves 10 seconds to read the rest of her credentials. His hand stopped on the line stamped, NSWC SEAL Team Evaluation Officer. Tier 1 clearance. SOCOM asset attached. He looked up. "They had no idea who you were." "They never asked," she replied. Graves exhaled. "God help them." Cade leaned forward slightly. "I don't want God. I want systems that don't protect men like that just because they're good at yelling over others in formation." "I understand." "No, sir. With respect, you don't. Because this is not the first time this has happened on your base. It's just the first time the target happened to be someone who could put 3 of them down before the 4th blinked." Graves nodded slowly, the weight of command responsibility settling into his spine. "They'll be processed immediately," he said. "Medical isolation. Suspension of all duties. Pending investigation." "There won't be an investigation," Cade said plainly. "There will be a review. A transfer. A full security assessment. And if those things don't happen within 48 hours, I will escalate this to SOCOM oversight." Graves winced. "You're not just here to observe, are you?" "I was," she replied, "until a training knife cut open my uniform." She stood, tone never changing. "My rank doesn't protect me, Admiral. What protects me is being dangerous. What should protect them, your Marines, is leadership." Graves straightened. "What do you want from me?" "Everything," she said. "Access files. Histories. Complaints. Transfers. You'll open your books. And I'll tell you what this place really is. And when the others find out who you are." "They won't need to," she said, turning to the door. "They'll know, just by how fast things start changing." The moment she stepped back out into the corridor, something rippled across the hallway. No one said a word. But every man in uniform straightened their back. Because no matter what rank was on her chest, everyone on that base now understood who was really in charge. By morning, the air on base had changed. Not visibly, not audibly. There were no sirens, no bulletins, no command-wide meetings. But the silence said enough. At 0600, the Chow Hall buzzed low with speculation. Rumors had scattered. A fight in the training corridor, MPs called, 3 Marines in medical lockup. But when the names started circulating, Eli Ilton, Marcus Vaughn, Jesse Tram, the reaction shifted from curiosity to something colder. Everyone knew those names. Men who walked a little too freely, laughed too loud at too many female personnel, never faced real consequences when rumors flared up and vanished under paperwork. No one said it aloud, but the relief was unmistakable. Kay didn't show up for breakfast. She didn't need to. The knowledge of her presence walked ahead of her like a new weight pressing down on shoulders that had gotten used to slouching around power. By 0800 she was seen outside the main armory consulting quietly with the weapons officer. By 0930 she observed Marine close combat refresher drills, her presence stiffening instructors' postures even though she said nothing. By midday, a new memo circulated. All personnel refresher evaluations to be reviewed by an external authority, unnamed, but stamped with a clearance band most had never seen. Among the women on base, word traveled faster. Private Sanchez to Corporal Evans in the motor pool. It was her. She dropped them like bags of wet cement. Staff Sergeant Delaney, eating alone as usual, suddenly found her seat joined by 2 female cadets who hadn't sat with anyone above E3 in a month. And inside the comms room when a technician whispered, "That quiet woman from drills yesterday, she's the reason command's rewriting protocols." Her voice didn't carry fear. It carried gratitude. The change didn't come with marching bands or reprimand parades. It came with the knowledge that the woman walking across the lot in a reissued shirt with no rank on display had accomplished what no one else had. Shifted the balance, not through authority but through action. And for once it felt like the walls were listening. If someone crossed that line with you, would you have stayed calm or snapped? And do you think those 3 Marines finally understood the difference between intimidation and real strength? If a Navy SEAL like her walked into your unit tomorrow, would anyone recognize what she really is before it's too late? Drop your answers in the comments, we read every single one. If this story made you stop and think, smash that like button, hit subscribe to TaleVerse Studio, and make sure that bell icon is turned on so you never miss a story like this. We upload daily. True tension, respect earned, justice delivered. Only on TaleVerse Studio. So if someone in your circle still thinks silence means weakness, send them this. And when the next video pops up on your screen, click it. We'll see you tomorrow.